Each of the six involved allegations that individuals of African descent were unwelcome in predominantly Caucasian residential areas. A gentleman walking his canine in East Memphis, detained and interrogated about his place of residence. A young man on a skateboard in Germantown, held for alleged trespassing on public walkways. A woman tending to her garden in Chickasaw Gardens, requested to present proof of residency. Each complaint concluded with an identical outcome. He underwent conflict resolution instruction, which Ramsey attended but never truly absorbed. One Sunday morning in Memphis, his ingrained presumption that black individuals did not belong in affluent districts finally encountered an individual who had spent 3 decades diligently establishing her presence in that very neighborhood, and that confrontation would bring about the end of Ramsey's tenure. It would cost the city $2,900,000 and expose a department that had overlooked 6 similar complaints within 4 years. Dr. Simone Hartley, a black woman in her late 50s, was standing in the driveway of her modest single-story home, collecting her mail on a quiet Sunday morning. She held her car keys in her hand, having just returned from early hospital duties. No transgression, no unlawful entry, no infraction, merely a medical professional retrieving her mail at her own abode. However, Officer Ramsey perceived her through a lens so warped by preconceived notions about who was permitted in upscale areas that he was incapable of recognizing a black woman as a legitimate property owner. He could not conceive that prosperity and property ownership were not confined by the racial divides Ramsey rigidly enforced in his own mind, nor could he accept that the individual he was about to approach had a greater entitlement to be on that property than Ramsey himself had to question her. Before we continue, where are you observing from? If this is your initial visit, kindly select the subscribe button. Narratives such as these warrant dissemination, and your backing assists us in bringing more truths to light. Memphis, Tennessee, Central Gardens, a historic district renowned for its elegant residences dating back to the 1920s. Streets lined with mature trees, forming dense canopies that create shaded passages, and property valuations reflecting both the architectural splendor and the esteemed address. This area is predominantly Caucasian, affluent, and guards its exclusivity through both overt and subtle means. It was 8:45 on a Sunday morning in September. The air was still crisp before the Tennessee heat intensified later in the day. Church bells chimed in the distance. A few residents were out walking their pets or collecting their newspapers, a typical peaceful Sunday morning when nothing extraordinary usually occurs. Dr. Simone Hartley had been a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial Hospital for 28 years. 28 years dedicated to preserving lives, performing surgical interventions, mentoring junior doctors, and cultivating a reputation as one of the most proficient interventional cardiologists in the Mid-South region. She had completed her medical studies at Vanderbilt, her residency at Johns Hopkins, and her fellowship in interventional cardiology at the Cleveland Clinic. She had published academic research. She had served on hospital governing boards. She had trained an entire generation of younger physicians. Her patients placed their complete trust in her. Her colleagues held her in high regard. Hospital administrators valued her contributions. Simone had grown up in Memphis, the daughter of immigrants who had established a small restaurant in the city center. She had witnessed her parents working 16-hour days, painstakingly accumulating the necessary funds to finance her college education. She had been the first in her family to pursue a medical degree. She had diligently advanced through every stage of her professional training, relying on a combination of exceptional intellect and an unyielding work ethic. By the age of 40, she had become an established cardiologist. By 50, she was recognized as one of the leading figures in her specialty within Memphis. 12 years prior, she had acquired the residence in Central Gardens, a meticulously maintained single-story dwelling with a brick foundation, a sheltered front porch, and a small yet carefully nurtured garden. She had paid in cash, the culmination of decades spent working 100-hour weeks and engaging in prudent financial management. She had transformed it into her personal haven, the place where she found solace after days that frequently commenced at 5 in the morning and concluded near midnight. Her neighbors had exhibited politeness upon her arrival, some extending friendship, others maintaining a degree of reserve. Over the intervening years, a few had made remarks that carried discernible undertones she recognized. They expressed surprise at her profession, inquired about her living situation, and made assumptions about her financial capacity to own the house. Simone had mastered the art of navigating these subtle affronts with poise, judiciously selecting her battles and concentrating on her professional responsibilities rather than engaging in neighborhood politics. On that particular Sunday morning, Simone had arrived at the hospital at 6:30 for her early rounds, attending to 2 patients recovering from surgery before commencing her journey home. She had entered her driveway at 8:40, intending to change her attire and engage in some gardening before the heat became unbearable. She had exited her vehicle and walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway to retrieve Saturday's mail, which she had not yet collected. She was standing on her own property, in her own driveway, engaged in an activity she performed on multiple occasions each week. She possessed every legal entitlement to be there. She was the legal owner of the residence. She was the owner of the land. She remitted the property taxes. However, Officer Derek Ramsey, responding to a report of a suspicious individual, perceived the situation differently. Ramsey had been a member of the Memphis PD for 4 years, assigned to patrol duties in affluent neighborhoods for the preceding 2 years. His superiors characterized him as diligent in property protection, a euphemism for being overly assertive in questioning individuals who did not conform to his mental image of who belonged in upscale areas. In the span of 4 years, he had generated 6 official complaints. Without exception, each complaint involved a black individual within a predominantly Caucasian neighborhood. A commercial vehicle belonging to a contractor was parked in front of a residence in East Memphis. Ramsey questioned the workers, demanded to see their permits, and contacted the homeowner to confirm they had indeed engaged the services of black contractors. The workers were fully licensed and legitimate. A complaint was filed and subsequently dismissed with a requirement for diversity awareness training. A university student visiting his grandmother in Germantown. Ramsey intercepted him as he walked from his car towards the house, demanded identification, and questioned the veracity of his familial ties to the neighborhood. The young man's grandmother emerged from the residence and confirmed his identity as her grandson. A complaint was filed and closed with a mandatory community engagement workshop. A real estate professional showcasing a property to prospective clients in Chickasaw Gardens. Ramsey approached, questioned their authorization to be present, and requested identification from the black agent, but not from the Caucasian clients. The agent possessed the necessary listing authorization. A complaint was filed and resolved with a mandatory implicit bias training session. The established pattern was unequivocal. Black individuals in Caucasian neighborhoods. Ramsey's presumption they are not meant to be there. Ramsey's action: to question, demand proof, and instigate confrontations. Complaints were filed and training was mandated. There were no tangible repercussions, no genuine accountability. The Memphis PD maintained a file pertaining to Ramsey that documented these 6 complaints over a 4-year period. This equates to an average of 1.5 complaints annually, all adhering to the identical pattern. However, the department treated each occurrence in isolation, never aggregating them into the undeniable pattern they collectively formed. Consequently, Ramsey continued his patrols, his interrogations, his assumptions. On that particular morning, Ramsey received a notification from dispatch, a report of a suspicious individual in Central Gardens. The caller stated that an unidentified black woman was observed in a driveway on Carr Avenue. The caller speculated that it might be an attempted burglary or an act of trespassing. The caller adamantly maintained that the homeowner was an elderly Caucasian woman. Ramsey proceeded to the location within minutes. This was his area of expertise: safeguarding property, ensuring neighborhood security, and investigating suspicious activities. He turned onto Carr Avenue and immediately observed what had been reported by the caller: a black woman standing beside a mailbox situated in the driveway of a well-maintained suburban residence. In Ramsey's perception, this scenario did not align. Central Gardens, a meticulously kept house, a black woman. Something was amiss. He did not entertain the possibility that the woman might own the property. He did not consider the numerous black professionals who had relocated to historically Caucasian Memphis neighborhoods over the preceding decades. He did not question the caller's inherent assumption that the homeowner must be white. He simply acted in accordance with his established practice. Observe a black individual in a Caucasian neighborhood. Assume they do not belong. Intervene. Ramsey maneuvered his patrol car to the curb and exited. Do you believe officers should ascertain ownership before confronting individuals in their own driveways? Share your thoughts below. Simone had just withdrawn several pieces of mail from her mailbox when she heard the sound of a car door closing. She turned and saw a police cruiser. Her heart immediately sank. She had heard accounts from other black homeowners in predominantly Caucasian neighborhoods, stories about being questioned, about being compelled to substantiate their right to reside in their own homes. She had never imagined that such an experience would befall her. The officer approached, his hand resting near his radio. Madam, you must vacate this premises. Simone blinked, processing the sheer irrationality of the directive. Pardon me, I live here. The homeowner reported an unauthorized individual on the property. Simone felt a surge of anger, yet she managed to maintain a composed tone. I am the homeowner. This is my house. Ramsey's expression remained unchanged. The caller stated, The owner is an elderly Caucasian female. Your appearance does not precisely align with that description, does it? The informant is mistaken. I am Dr. Simone Hartley. I have resided here for 12 years. She gestured towards the residence. This is my home. I possess ownership. My name is inscribed on the deed. A doctor, you say? I'm sure that's true. This is the point where assumptions transmute into accusations. Officer Derek Ramsey had responded to a report initiated by a neighbor who had made an assumption based solely on race. This neighbor had never met Simone, had never engaged in conversation with her, yet had concluded that a black woman standing in this driveway must not belong there, and Ramsey, rather than challenging that assumption, inadvertently reinforced it. Officer, I have no intention of leaving my own property. If you require verification of any matter, kindly consult the property records. My name is on the deed. I've owned this house since 2011. I'm a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial. I've resided in Memphis my entire life. Step away from the property while I confirm your claim. Simone's professional demeanor began to falter. My claim? This is my house. I am standing in my own driveway. Observe this mail. She held up the stack of correspondence she had just retrieved. It is all addressed to Dr. Simone Hartley at this location because this is where I reside. Madam, I require you to... Who initiated the call? Was it Mrs. Henderson from next door? The individual who has resided here for 3 years and has never once introduced herself? Or was it someone else who finds it inconceivable that a black woman owns a residence in Central Gardens? Ramsey's expression hardened. I am unable to disclose the caller's identity. Naturally, you cannot, because then I would know precisely which neighbor presumed I was a criminal simply for collecting my mail. A vehicle slowed its pace as it passed. The driver, an elderly Caucasian gentleman, lowered his window. Is everything all right, officer? Ramsey turned. Merely investigating a report, sir. That is Dr. Hartley. She resides there. She has for many years. She is a cardiologist. The gentleman looked towards Simone. Simone, is there an issue? Simone's voice conveyed a mixture of gratitude and exasperation. Officer Ramsey here received a report alleging that I am trespassing in my own driveway. The gentleman's expression shifted to one of disdain. That is preposterous. Officer, she owns that house. Examine the records if you doubt her word, but do not compel her to prove her right to be in her own home. He drove away, shaking his head. Ramsey observed his departure, then turned back to Simone, his conviction wavering, but his pride intact. I still require verification, then confirmation. Contact your supervisor. Examine the property records. Undertake whatever action is necessary, but I am not vacating my driveway, and I will not be subjected to treatment as a criminal for the act of checking my mail. Ramsey reached for his radio. Dispatch. I require a supervisor at 2847 Carr Avenue, and please conduct a property record verification for this address. Within 7 minutes, a supervisor's vehicle arrived. Sergeant Donald Williams emerged from the vehicle, a 32-year veteran who had served in Memphis long enough to have witnessed this exact scenario unfold on numerous occasions. He had reviewed Ramsey's complaint file. He had recommended disciplinary action following the 4th complaint. He had been overruled by superior command staff who wished to avoid labor union repercussions. He approached and immediately assessed the situation. A well-maintained residence. A woman standing calmly, holding mail. A patrol car obstructing the driveway. No indication of criminal activity, no indication of anything other than a misjudged call and a regrettable display of judgment. Ramsey, what is occurring? An anonymous report of trespassing. The individual claims to be the homeowner, but the caller stated, I do not concern myself with what the caller said. Williams turned towards Simone. Madam, I am Sergeant Williams. I extend my apologies for this interaction. Are you the homeowner? Simone's voice was steady, yet it carried the burden of her profound weariness with the situation. Yes, my name is Dr. Simone Hartley. I have owned this house for 12 years. I am a cardiologist at Baptist Memorial. I was collecting my mail when Officer Ramsey arrived and instructed me to leave my own property. Williams retrieved his phone and swiftly accessed the Shelby County Property Records database. Property located at 2847 Carr Avenue. Simone Hartley. Acquisition date 2011. No outstanding liens. Taxes are current. Everything is in order. He turned to Ramsey with barely concealed frustration. She is the owner. The property records confirm this. Why did you not ascertain this prior to confronting her? The caller was mistaken, and you should have conducted verification before accusing someone of trespassing on their own property. Williams turned back to Simone. Dr. Hartley, I offer my sincerest apologies. This should never have transpired. Officer Ramsey responded to a report without adequate verification. If you wish to file a formal complaint, I will provide all necessary documentation. Simone looked first at Ramsey, then at Williams. Sergeant, this is the 6th instance in 12 years that I have been questioned in this neighborhood. Security personnel have inquired if I am the housekeeper. Neighbors have asked if I am visiting someone. Now a police officer has told me to leave my own driveway. I am a physician. My profession involves saving lives, and yet I cannot retrieve my mail without being treated as if I do not belong here. Another neighbor emerged from a residence across the street, a Caucasian woman in her 70s. Is Simone all right? Why are the police here? Williams addressed her. Madam, did you report a suspicious individual? No. Simone has resided here for years. She is a wonderful person. Who made the call? The question hung in the air. Someone within this neighborhood had observed Simone in her driveway and contacted the authorities. Someone had presumed criminal intent based on nothing more than her presence. And that individual would remain anonymous while Simone grappled with the repercussions. Should neighbors face repercussions for filing false police reports based on racial assumptions? Please share your thoughts. Williams spoke into his radio. Dispatch, cancel the property check. Homeowner has been verified. No further action is required. He turned to Ramsey. Your badge and radio. You are being placed on administrative leave, pending an investigation. Ramsey's face paled. Sergeant, I was responding to a report. You responded to a report and made no attempt to verify the information before confronting a homeowner. This is your 6th complaint in 4 years. All 6 involve the same pattern. Your patrol duties are suspended until this matter is investigated. Badge and radio. Now. Ramsey handed them over, his hands trembling. Williams addressed Simone once more. Dr. Hartley, the department will conduct a comprehensive investigation. You will have access to all reports and recordings, and I personally regret that this occurred. Simone nodded slowly. Sergeant, I appreciate your intervention, but I need you to understand that this issue extends beyond Officer Ramsey. This concerns a system that permits officers to accumulate 6 complaints without facing any consequences. This pertains to neighbors who alert the police to black individuals simply for existing in spaces they legally possess. This is about being a homeowner for 12 years and still being required to demonstrate that I belong. By that evening, Simone had retained legal counsel. By Monday morning, local news outlets were reporting on the incident. Cardiologist confronted by police in her own driveway. Memphis officer questions legitimacy of black homeowner. Doctor instructed to leave her own property after neighbor's call. The medical community responded with immediate solidarity. Baptist Memorial issued a statement in support of Dr. Hartley. The Memphis Medical Society issued a condemnation of the incident. Her patients began sharing their experiences with her, accounts of a physician who had saved their lives, who had worked through holidays and weekends, who had earned every ounce of respect she commanded. Civil rights organizations offered their assistance. The NASP called for decisive action. The ACLU documented the incident as part of a broader pattern of racial profiling in affluent Memphis neighborhoods. 3 weeks later, Simone initiated legal proceedings, naming Officer Derek Ramsey, his supervisors, who had disregarded the 6 complaints, and the Memphis PD. The allegations were specific: racial profiling and discrimination, unlawful detention, harassment, infringement of property rights, and violation of Fourth Amendment protections, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and deliberate indifference to Ramsey's persistent pattern of discriminatory stops. The complaint encompassed Ramsey's complete disciplinary record, 6 complaints spanning 4 years. Each of the 6 involved black residents in predominantly Caucasian neighborhoods. All were dismissed with mandated training that failed to effect any behavioral change. The city attorneys for Memphis reviewed the case. Property records definitively established ownership. Witness testimonies corroborated the account. Ramsey lacked any legal justification for demanding that Simone vacate her own property. The documented pattern of complaints demonstrated a clear and deliberate indifference on the part of the department. The city reached a settlement 18 months later. $2,900,000 was awarded to Dr. Simone Hartley, representing one of the largest settlements in Memphis history for an unlawful stop on private property. Officer Derek Ramsey was dismissed 10 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was unequivocal. Officer Ramsey engaged in racial profiling of a homeowner on private property. He demanded that Dr. Hartley leave her own driveway based on an unverified anonymous call. He failed to conduct basic verification prior to confronting a property owner. His pattern of similar conduct, documented through 6 complaints within 4 years, demonstrates an inability to serve without racial bias. Employment is terminated immediately. Ramsey's name was entered into the National Decertification Index. His 4-year career in law enforcement concluded. The union attempted to challenge the dismissal. The city presented Ramsey's complaint file, witness statements, and property records. The union withdrew its appeal after a thorough review of the evidence. Ramsey issued a brief statement. "I committed serious errors and allowed assumptions to guide my actions. I offer my apologies to Dr. Hartley." Simone testified before the Memphis City Council. "I am a physician. I have devoted my life to healing individuals. I have worked 80-hour weeks for 28 years. I purchased my home with funds earned through decades of service to this community, and Officer Ramsey instructed me to leave my own driveway because someone called and stated that the homeowner should be Caucasian. 6 complaints within 4 years, all within these neighborhoods. That is not an unfortunate coincidence. That is a deliberate pattern, a pattern that your department chose to ignore until it targeted someone possessing the resources to challenge it." She paused. $2,900,000 is the cost to finally address a single officer's 4-year pattern. However, monetary compensation does not undo the humiliation of being treated as a criminal in your own driveway. It does not erase the indignity of having neighbors witness you prove your ownership of your home. And it does not prevent the next officer with 6 complaints from perpetrating the same offense. The Memphis PD implemented departmental reforms 10 months later. Mandatory property record verification is essential before making accusations of trespassing on private land. When 3 similar complaints arise, an automatic investigation should be initiated. All residential confrontations must be reviewed via body camera footage. A community liaison program is vital for connecting officers with residents from various backgrounds. Commanders must be held accountable for officers who demonstrate documented patterns of misconduct. Why do law enforcement agencies address each complaint individually rather than identifying recurring issues? Share your perspectives in the comments. This situation wasn't merely about a single Sunday morning. It was about a department that allowed Derek Ramsey to accumulate 6 complaints exhibiting the exact same discriminatory behavior without recognizing the cumulative pattern they represented. The complaints were officially recorded. The pattern was clear, yet the Memphis PD handled each incident as an isolated event, failing to acknowledge that 6 identical complaints over 4 years indicated a systemic flaw, not just individual errors. Dr. Simone Hartley bore the brunt of this failure. She was confronted in her own driveway, compelled to prove she owned her home. She was treated as an intruder on property she had acquired through decades of diligent work and savings. Derek Ramsey's career has concluded. That's the consequence. The city has disbursed $2,900,000. That's accountability. However, these measures were implemented only after 6 complaints and 4 years of consistent behavior. 4 years passed during which victims lacked medical degrees or property deeds to present as proof. 4 years where individuals were questioned simply for walking, existing, or residing in neighborhoods where Ramsey believed they had no place. The crucial question now is what will change. Will law enforcement agencies connect the dots after the 3rd complaint rather than waiting until the 6th? Will they identify patterns when officers repeatedly target the same demographic in similar circumstances? Will they prioritize the protection of citizens over the shielding of officers with evident biases? Because if we fail to rectify the system that permitted Derek Ramsey to remain on patrol for 4 years despite 6 identical complaints, if we do not address the prevailing culture that treats pattern recognition as optional, then we are merely anticipating the next officer with a history of 6 complaints, the subsequent victim, the next doctor who is told to leave her own driveway. Please comment if this should be a mandatory policy. 3 similar complaints within a 3-year period will trigger an automatic investigation and potential termination. No longer will incidents be treated in isolation. Pattern recognition will become an official policy. And if you believe these narratives are significant, if you feel that 6 complaints over 4 years should have led to action after the 3rd complaint, then please subscribe. We are bringing to light departments that disregard obvious patterns. We are advocating for better practices. We are standing up for homeowners who deserve to be in their own driveways without having to justify their presence. This is not about a single officer or a single doctor. It concerns systems that allow patterns of misconduct to persist and the individuals who suffer the consequences of such deliberate ignorance.